Today's lecture, welcome. Today's lecture is about balance. So, people in the room and people online, where did you see balance in that video? Yeah, there's plenty of balance in that video.
Do you mean the power dynamics between the birds and?
Yeah, all the different forms of balance. Y'all can hear me online still, right? Two sources, just making sure that the video worked. Yes, okay, excellent, okay. Well, I guess before we answer that, let me start off with some announcements. Excellent news, excellent news. This lecture and all the lectures after it will not devolve into an awkward mess.
Okay.
Your supplies from Vortman's should be in this week. They haven't emailed me as to their availability yet, but it will be available this week. The first project, I have the supplies for the first project out in my car. When we break, I will go grab them before demo. Setting a timer. But yeah, so that's the announcements. Quick and easy. Where did y'all see balance in that video?
There was a radio symmetry and projective shapes on the egg and around.
So the way the body of the bird was kind of equal on both parts. You had two drummers as the feet. You had the keyboardist in the middle, and you had the string section across its body. It was like kind of built like the human body. It's basically pretty well the same on both sides.
But it had like the radio symmetry.
Yeah.
I don't know.
This lecture, I'm going to go over a few concepts of balance. And the radial symmetry, the symmetrical and asymmetrical symmetry, the repetition of color, yeah. You said, remind me of your name again?
Tori.
The power dynamic, that's true. I know how to spell. I can spell very well sometimes. Repetition of color. Toria said the power dynamic, the standoff. Anything else? Okay, it's all good. Just one more time.
Now I'm curious.
Say again?
So now I'm curious.
Curious as to what?
What you saw.
All the same things that y'all did. The balance that I saw were the distribution of the musicians and the bird. So you've got your bass, you've got your drums as the legs, hold it down as the tempo. You have your keyboard in the middle, and then on top of that, you had your guitars as the arms or the wings, and the bass in the middle of the string section, and then the head of the bird was the vocalist. So it's kind of balance in that, like the lead band member was the brain, and everyone under him were the facilities of the bird. There is balance in, like you said, the power dynamic. There was 3 adversaries to the bird that the bird wiped out. It was just I thought it was a good video to get just get us thinking this morning, kind of break the ice, get us thinking about balance. And typically when we think of balance, we think of something like this. We think of the literal balancing act, walking a tightrope, very rudimentary understanding of balance. And I had another video, but it doesn't look like it's going to work. That is frustrating. But I will jump into that later because this video right here deals with asymmetrical symmetry, symmetrical symmetry, and radial balance. But let's jump into some examples. One of my favorite painters is Mark Rothko. Where do y'all see balance in these paintings? Have y'all ever seen Mark Rothko's work in person? Yeah, it's Mark Rothko is one of those classic artists. That like basically any major museum in any metropolitan area, I'm in your way. All right. Okay. Yeah. He's one of those artists where any major. Bridget, what did you say no to?
I think when you asked her, seen his work.
If we what?
I think she said no, she hasn't seen his work before.
Oh, I see. Okay. Thank you, Bridget. I am still trying to strike a balance between in-person class and online class. So balance is at play everywhere we look. Rothko is one of those artists like Frida Kahlo or Jackson Pollock, who you've probably seen their work. They're pretty famous in the art world. Hello, what's your name? Tasia. Tasia? Yes. Kind of balance I'm seeing here is symmetrical. It's not perfectly symmetrical, but it's implied symmetry down the middle. A lot of his paintings, most all of his paintings are these big immersive color studies. I put this picture here as a size comparison. They are very engulfing. Did you have your hand raised? They're very immersive paintings. And more than just symmetrical balance down the middle here, he also balances weight. Like in this middle painting here, you have this top-heavy orange rectangle that takes up most of the painting, but then you have these on the bottom part that is lighter. You have two colors, so there's two colors going on at the bottom of the painting here, but the weight is evened out, the visual weight, I should say, is evened out by a big color up here. And so balance is a cornerstone in Mark Rothko's work. And right beside it, you have an example of skewed balance. And the same over here to the right. So that brings me to the Rothko Chapel. Has anyone been to or heard of the Rothko Chapel? It's in Houston.
Yeah.
This is the Rothko Chapel. And even just standing outside, you can see the symmetry in the building, the statue out front, even the lake or the pond. The chapel was commissioned by a art collector couple back in the 60s, and they commissioned Rothko it took them a few years, I think, but they commissioned Rothko to curate a chapel, essentially. And this is the inside. And we can see this idea of balance being echoed through the whole place. These stools, I've never been. I want to as an artist, like Marfa, Texas, the Rothko Chapel, or a couple of like pilgrimages. I intend on making, but that many artists make. The stools are not, they get moved around, but typically in all the pictures I've seen of the stools or the pews, they move them, they keep the balance on the floor. They keep kind of a feng shui on the floor. They don't just like, everything is precise in the chapel. And the art collector couple that curated this were not an especially spiritual or religious couple, and neither was Rothko for that matter, but a lot of his paintings are so immersive, like they're so big and overwhelming that they related, and these are murals he did too, and they look blank, but there are things going on. And this chapel emphasized kind of the awe that Rothko put into his paintings and that some people would see in looking at a Rothko piece, just big and immersive, and the piece itself is an experience, and the presence of the piece is as much of the experience as the content of the picture. So, continuing on, this is an artist named Elizabeth Hedinga. This is the kind of work she does. This is in the middle of her process. Let's check it out. She's a Toronto-based artist. This is bigger. Okay. What kind of balance can y'all see in her work? What do y'all think? How is her work balanced? Say again? Yes, radial symmetry. How else might this work be considered balanced? People online, how might this work be considered balanced? I can see balance in the way it's threaded. Very procedural. It looks chaotic, but it's very nuanced, very meticulously placed. I could see balance in how the color is evenly dispersed. There's not too much of one color in any area. The way that yes, Emily, distribution of colors. Come on.
But also say like in the way that she executed it, nothing is clustered in one section, everything's like just like what we said about colors.
She paints at large abstract works, and I haven't seen what the abstract works look like prior to being cut up, but she paints large colorful abstract works and then laser cuts them and takes the strips and weaves these paintings. Here's what the middle looks like. And it's her work is, the work is kind of about how the painting is larger than the sum of its parts. You could break it down into just frame and strips, but you need the whole picture, I guess, a way to put it, to understand what you're looking at. The whole picture informs all the details. She's a German artist, and the artist I show y'all today, she's Rothko, and then she's still alive. Rothko is dead. And so the artists I show y'all today are going to get more and more local, closer to home. Check her out on Instagram. She's one of my, Instagram is a very powerful format. I should probably plan a lecture later this semester about the power of Instagram. Moving on. Okay. You've all seen this before. Who knows what this is? Or I guess what would you Google search to get this image? What would you type into Google?
I'm gonna say Lady Liberty. Justice.
Liberty, Lady Justice. What kind of dynamics of balance are going on in this picture, both conceptually and aesthetically? Like, what are the ideas, and what's the balance in the ideas here, and what are the balance in the visuals?
I think asymmetry for her garment, for her dress, and then also for how passive she is, but also dominating. Like you were saying, power dynamics.
Yeah.
Her ways here.
There's balance in how she's, or I guess the symbolism first. Blindfolded, plus Justice is blind. The sword, which in I think the 1600s, when this image first started being heavily circulated and used, the sword was a symbol of authority. That authority would be distributed swiftly. The toga is a symbol because that, in the time of this, when this image first started going into heavy rotation, toga was a symbol of authority. And the scale, that all the evidence shall be considered fairly. There's a balance between the scale and the sword and what they mean. Understanding and all of the understanding and execution of authority. There's a balance in how one hand is raised, how one hand is down, like even in the body. I started it off, there's balance in her eyes are closed, but almost all of her other senses are keen and aware. There's balance in the idea that behind the blindfold, that you can't judge something just on sight alone.
Why is she a lady?
Why is she a lady? I don't.
It's viewed from the Bible. Like if it is a whole thing as well.
In what I read, that's a good question. It's a lady, because in the societies the society where she came from a few hundred years ago, it was a male-dominated society. And they saw the female figure as just and loving. The symbolism here, they saw fair, just, harsh when she needed to be, but never without reason. She's a woman because the governments of that day were male-dominated, and that is a very good question. I could do another lecture for it.
I feel like the construction.
Yeah. Okay. Any questions so far online, y'all? No, excellent. Okay, who's heard of the Guerrilla Girls? If you progress in a visual art degree, you will hear about the Guerrilla Girls. They, I don't know all the artists' names. A few of their members are very, very prolific artists, but they were like a performance art protest group that challenged all the major galleries, like starting in the 80s, where they challenged the power dynamic in the galleries. They didn't like how most of the galleries catered to white, straight, male artists, or just that galleries and the museums and the art world at large would cater to the male gaze, and that there was a very real disparity. Sorry. But there was an imbalance in women artists in major markets. Like this first one, how many women had one person exhibits at the NYC museums last year? And this is 1985. And 30 years later, how many women had one person exhibitions at New York museums last year? And the numbers are only a little better. And I know the Dallas Museum of Art has a Guerrilla Girls piece. I think they have this one or a print of this one. And so what kind of balance, in y'all's words, what kind of balance are we talking about here?
Societal balance?
Societal balance, equity in the arts. This like yellow one right here, less than 5% of the artists in the modern art sections are women, but 85% of the nudes are female. And they're just calling attention to the art world being heavily biased towards the male gaze. And this is not like, you're not gonna be quizzed on the Guerrilla Girls in this class. This is a 2D foundations class, but I want y'all to think about balance beyond the root, just like this idea, your equilibrium in systems of balance.
What I find interesting about that is like, when you look at practicing artists, or even down to the 92 students I teach, like 85% of them, or 85 of them are girls. So it's funny how like, there's almost like a glass ceiling in a way where a shift happens, and yes, it's to a society, it's where they're not welcomed into that, even though there's a plethora of that. So that's really interesting. Why do you think that is?
Huh?
Like in your words, you don't have to. But
Can you, it's hard to hear
no,
because.
no, sorry. I was just saying, out of I have like 92-ish students, right? And I'd say 85% of them are young girls. And I always wondered why, at a certain age, there's almost like a glass ceiling that keeps them from being represented in the same way in the art world, you know?
Mm-hmm.
So,
Like in the art world at large, or?
well, yeah, once you get to, I guess, college and such. So, in like your experience as an artist, and being that we all know it's like a male-dominated thing.
I think a lot of that falls down to, I think, a lot of the socioeconomic problems that we face now that lead to other problems. Equity in education, fair pay. That That's a lot to unpack.
I know.
No, that's a good question. This is what I want in our lectures.
I figured you'd be open to talk about it, but maybe not right now.
A short answer would be there is this kind of glass ceiling, and I think there's a similar answer at the answer to that is similar in how there's an inequality in pay and opportunity. That's a great question.
No, you don't have to answer.
You're right though, and the Gorilla Girls are tackling this, so it is a reality we face in the art world. Hold on to that. And
Don't even worry about it.
That's great. That's great. It's thinking in this class is not one way. It's not just me. Here's an idea. You think about it. We're all here to learn. So what kind of balance, people in the room and people online, what kind of balance do you see in this Keith Haring illustration?
Does ignorance equals fear? I don't understand. Isn't ignorance like bliss? I don't know.
I feel like maybe fear of things that you don't agree with.
Oh, yeah, I see.
Yeah, but I was thinking the same thing.
Keith Haring was an advocate. He's also passed away. He was an advocate for equal rights in the homosexual community. He was also an advocate for people with HIV and AIDS getting fair or getting an equitable treatment. I think that's what this piece is tackling, because he was prominent through the 80s and 90s. The balance I see in this piece or in the composition, it's symmetrical on both sides. It's balanced on three parts in see no evil, hear no evil, speak no evil. It's balanced conceptually in these see no evil, hear no evil, speak no evil, which these three people choosing to be afraid by being ignorant, and the overall message is that ignorance equals fear. And so it's this heavy red section is the visual, the action, and this blue section, while it doesn't take up as much of the composition, holds an equal amount of weight. Oh, almost. Keith Haring, there's also balance in his works. If you've seen any of his other work let's go check it out. Let's go check out more Keith Haring.
He also had a really great shoe collection. He had a lot of Jordan 1 and 2 in mind.
Check it out. No. Well, I think there's balance in his work, and how there's movement everywhere. All of the composition is used up. There's balance in the width of his lines, his line work. Keith Haring is a great example of an artist who made an entire career out of really basic illustration. Simple enough designs. I mean, he was an artist and he was an activist too, so I'm only barely scratching the surface on Keith Haring. But just in the aesthetics of his work, he's another artist where balance is key. And it's this, you could see his work, any part of his work you could view as just a snapshot from a sketchbook, blown up.
It's also like what stood the test of time, because he's just as popular. I don't know if he's just as popular now, but he's very.
He's just like
He just had a shoe collab. He's good.
Like he's one of those artists that is posthumously getting more popular And that's a crazy idea in how, like, I mean, Jimi Hendrix has been a famous dead musician longer than he was alive. And that's crazy. Yeah, Keith Haring too, and Basquiat, Picasso, I mean, Warhol, yeah. Artists some of these artists, the best thing they did for their art careers was die. Yeah. Okay. Anyone online have anything to throw in? It's very easy to get just really involved in the classroom, and online it's easy to leave people online behind because we're all still getting used to how this works. Anyone online have anything to throw in? Or better yet, does anyone online have any artists they'd like us to look at in terms of balance in their work? Don't all of you step up at once now? Okay, that's fine. Antonio Lasciuga. He's a Dallas artist. I had a studio visit with him, and he almost is on Instagram as Let Us Look, Antonio Lasciuga. And his work is meticulous. What kind of balance can y'all see here?
Colors.
Color distribution, what else? I'm sorry to say.
Rhythm?
Yes, rhythm.
All the lines are the same.
He uses, I've gotten to see these in person, and the detail is incredible. Like, the same as you see it here on this screen, you see a picture, his painting in person, and the closer you get, it's like a high-res image. The lines, there's no bleed, it's crisp. And his work is about perfection, being extremely precise. All of the lines are equal width. And so it may not be a symmetrical image per se. The visual weight is very balanced. He is a Dallas artist.
This is acrylic?
Yes, also that. This is just color, a golden acrylic. And his studio, it's cool. It's like the dream studio. It's like about the size of this room, maybe skinnier, but I mean, he has his living quarters in the back, and his whole living room is just this production of this, his research, and all his other goings on. Oh yeah, by the way, y'all, there was no discussion last week. No discussion because I couldn't think of anything of substance to ask you. And I'm not gonna give you busy work, because then that's just busy work for me later. And the start of this class has been kind of rough, and I thank y'all for the patience. But no discussion last week, and I will post a discussion up today after class. And what we'll start doing with discussion is start Monday, it'll be due Monday, and then we'll start it over. And so as we get going, or as we continue, already 2 weeks, 3 weeks deep, we'll get this process refined. But later on, before the demo, I will review the assignments y'all need to know and the steps therein. I'm keeping all of the assignments just consolidated. And yeah, I forgot to tell y'all that at the top of the class. No discussion. It was a mixture of forgetting and just not having anything of substance to ask. So yeah. Okay. This is Mallory Murphy. This is a Denton artist right here in our community. What kind of balance do you see in this picture, y'all?
Life and death, dead, right?
That's a illustration of a corpse. Uh-huh. What y'all think about the balance in this one? For the days of arrival, we've said balance no less than 1,000,000 times.
Say it, color contrast.
There's a balance in life and death. There's all of these blooming, thriving, abundant flowers, all of these lush shapes juxtaposed to these morbid body parts. A lot of her work. This is digital. She has a very painterly touch. I don't think she painted this. She finds digital images and renders them and like very surgically pieces them together. This is not a painting. And what I'll be showing you all about radial symmetry later, she has a very good sense of radial symmetry. And it's not symmetrical, like straight up symmetrical, but it is balanced. I mean, think about the weight between what a skeleton hand means and this blooming lush flower in the relative same location. And this part of the spine up here with this similar kind of shape down here, this plant. So let's go to our website. Which one y'all want to look at? I own a copy of this one. The lady, let's do it. Yes, and this is collage, and I do collage work too. We will be jumping into that later in the semester. I think that's going to be. I am looking forward to our collage project most intently. The blue one right here? Kind of what balance are you seeing here?
I thought that was a face, that's not a face at all.
A face, you said?
Yeah, I think the human eye just wants to see faces and everything, but I'm completely driven because there's no faces.
See?
I'm like, this is
Jellyfish, octopus,
I see.
sea anemones, and it's called Underworld, so it throws you, it gives you one expectation in the title and the color scheme.
Exactly.
And
What is that top? On the, keep going on the right? Yes, what is that? Is that
octopus.
Oh, okay,
Okay, so
that makes sense. I thought it was
Yeah.
really creepy, very intense. But that makes sense. Okay.
sorry. Oh. But yeah, there is more balance as a concept. If y'all continue as artists, if not even as artists, just as human beings, balance as a concept we see everywhere. It's an idea that we are constantly using, subconsciously in every decision that we make and every image that we see. These artists that I showed you, maybe it's not in their artist statement, maybe they don't say verbatim, balance is a part of my practice, but it's not even something they really think about, it's just something they intuitively do. And so all the principles in this class I want y'all to think about beyond the surface value. What can balance mean? Like, what can balance mean in our society and justice and like more than just a visual cue? And so, yes, Francis, yes, right on the nose. So, does anybody have any questions so far? I'm gonna stop sharing. All right, y'all, let's take a 15-minute break. 8:55, let's be back at 9:10. And when we come back, we will start the demo. I gotta run to my car and get the supplies. So see y'all in 15 minutes.